Welcome to everybody. So there is quite a lot of people in the room, which is nice to see that there is interest in the topic that we will be speaking about today, student housing cooperatives. I can also see many faces that are involved in housing cooperatives. So this is also aimed at being an informal space of exchange to get to know some projects that are quite exemplary, some new projects that are trying to build up their project, their student housing project. So I will quite quickly hand over the floor to the presentations that we have today. And the idea is after the presentation to have a moment of exchange between the speakers first. And of course, because there are so many people in the room, if you have any questions that you would address, I would suggest you put them in the chat so we can get back to them at the end of the exchange. And so this is just a few words about the network that we have been trying to build up since I think 2021 or even 2020. Bringing together student housing cooperatives around Europe to try to build up a supportive network and experience exchanges between projects, also trying to figure out how to address collectively the challenges that we are all facing today in the European context. And we are here supporting this network with Julie from Cooperative Housing International and myself representing Urbamonde, which is an NGO based in France and Switzerland, working on promoting community-led housing, in particular housing cooperative around the world. And of course, our colleagues here that you will get to know better during this presentation. So maybe we can start straight away. Or Julie, did you want to add something to this introduction?
Just a big thank you for everyone for joining us. Nice to see the interest in this topic, and also we are recording this. So if you know anyone who would like who wanted to join, who wasn't able to make it, we can share the recording afterwards. And I hope we have a great discussion.
Great. So this exchange is also quite informally prepared. So we will try to have some quick presentations, and there is no order for now, so I will just point to people to start. Maybe we can start with Jens. I'm sure he is very motivated to open the discussion. I let you introduce yourself and your organization.
Thanks, Leah, and hello to everyone. Nice to see you. So much interest we have with our webinar. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, it's up.
Yes. Yes.
All right. My name is Jens Uwe Köhler from Berlin. Jens is fine. We started our co-op in 2002. I was a resident in the students' village in Schlachtensee in the southwest of Berlin. In 2002, we had no housing crisis like we have now. And Berlin government was into selling houses, selling housing companies, selling places like our students' village. And we residents started to fight against the demolition. We got help from people from the city, monument preservationists, architects, neighbors. So we found our co-op, and we started to reconstruct the half demolished and empty village with now 920 rooms for students, which is really big. In the first years, we had problems to sell the rooms, so we didn't make people who joined the village for living there. didn't make them members of our co-op. So we still are 130 members in the co-op, which are former residents and all the people who helped us to save the village from demolition. Now we have 1,300 rooms for students in our old village in Schlachtensee and our new built village in Adlershof, which is in the southeast of Berlin. Here you can see two maps of the villages. We have mostly communal living with shared apartments or in shared apartments. We have 38 buildings, which are not only buildings for living, also buildings for common life. Like a building in Schlachtensee where we have a students' pub in, we have rooms for learning, for sports, and for things people need, also laundries. You can see 38 buildings, 44,000 square meters surface. We have both properties as a leasehold from a Swiss foundation, which gave us the money we didn't have in the beginning. And our reconstruction and our construction in Adlershof we did with cheap loans by the German government. Here you can see some pictures from our houses in Schlachtensee, from our rooms in Schlachtensee. This is Adlershof. We built new in 2014, so it's now 10 years old. A typical room, typical common room. And people in our villages like to be together, like to party together. We have people who work in participations like our tutors we have now in Schlachtensee and Adlershof. And in the beginning, we had self-organizations of the students, but they struggled with surviving. So in the moment, this is one of our topics I will tell you later about. Our work is done by our general meeting once a year. Our supervisory board, which is built by specialists. We ask for joining our supervisory board. We have meetings 5 times a year. The management is done by our officers board, 2 people. I'm the finance officer and my colleague is responsible for all the construction work and other things. And we have about 40 employees and some senior employees in the rental office, technical apartments, as caretakers, as cleaners. Lots of people. We are proud of having such so many employees. So we worked on some space for people who can work there, who get their money out of there to finance their lives. That I think is also important. And our main goals are for the next year's decarbonization with solar panels, heat pumps, and heat storage for the whole villages. We have to change a lot of things. We have to rebuild a lot of things we did some years before. So it will cost a lot of money again, but it's important. Then as we heard at the Social Housing Festival in Barcelona last year, a lot of southern co-ops have to fight against big heat. They have to save their people from the climate change. So in the north, we have to work for all the things that we don't put so much carbon again in the atmosphere. Participation, bring more people who live in our villages to in self-responsibility for their life and for the living in our villages, and more members into our co-op from present residents. Last but not least, we have a housing crisis now in Berlin, in Germany, and in Europe as well. So we need to build more affordable student housing. We have a big hope that we get cheap money from the government for 3 more houses here in Berlin. We will see. I think it will come out till August or September. So last but not least, you can see I'm not a student anymore. We have to work at our generational change. So bringing new people in responsibility to run our co-op for the next 30 years. And that's why we're here, international cooperation, to share our experiences, to ask for help, to give help, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jens. Perfectly timed. I will hand it over now to Collegium Academicum, which is a new group who recently joined the network. I let you present your organization and your project.
Yeah.
Hey.
Can you see our slideshow?
Yes.
Very well.
So welcome from us. We are Hannes and Linda from the Collegium Academicum from Germany, from Heidelberg. It's a small city in Germany, yeah. So maybe I will start with a short overview of our project. So we have 3 buildings. We have like a new building you see in the front there. We have an old building and a little old building who we're renovating in this moment. So we are nearly to 250 people in the whole project. We are just 176 students and trainees who shared 46 flats in the new building, and the rest of the people was like a big mix from other peoples are living like in the old building. So yeah, there we have like 5 young people who do an orientation year. We have 6 social housing flats, and we call it 2 normal flats. So yeah, in the beginning we was just 10 to 50 volunteers, and now we are 215. Yeah. So a short recap of our history. So the idea, or like our roots are in the historical Collegium Academicum, who was formed after the Second World War as a re-education program. And after it was closed because it was too left on the political spectrum, so there was I forgot the word. Non-profit organization who wanted to give more students the possibility to learn and to have like housing that's not so expensive. And from this group out, there was like the idea to getting a new big building for students living. Yeah. And so we started.
Yeah, some points about ourselves. We are completely self-managed. We have no paid positions. Everything is done in voluntary work. We have like weekly plenary meetings where we discuss everything and all topics, and also wanted to like general assemblies each year where we decide over major topics and like something the legal stuff that you have to do. What's maybe special about our project is that all our decisions are made by consensus, which means that any one member can veto a decision, and then it is blocked. So every decision that we make is a compromise, so that everyone inside of the project is okay with this decision. And we don't do like majority votes, so we always try to like get everyone involved in the decision-making progress and try to include all different opinions there. Also, only the people that live inside of our buildings actually have voting rights at the General Assembly. So it's always only the people that live here that decide what is going on. And all of this is part of a German-wide network called the Mietshäuser-Syndikat, which is like a network from all kinds of like social like housing co-ops, which is not especially a co-op. It's like another legal construct that they thought about, and it's like a network to make sure that none of these buildings in this networks can ever be sold again. So this is also a huge part of our project, that it's like to take away these buildings from the rental market, from the open market, and make sure that they only benefit the people that are actually living inside of the buildings. Another really big part is all different aspects of sustainability. This starts like in the architectural planning with the layout of our flats, where we have like try to have a really efficient layout to make it possible to change the amounts of private space and communal space that you have in your flat, to like make it possible to have really big communal spaces, to like have a really high quality of life on a very low area. Yeah, also our new building is made entirely out of wood, the main structure, which is also like a really new thing when we did that. Few points about land and finance. Our building is on the side of the old US Army base, which were empty after the army left, and the city decided to convert these areas. It was quite a long process. We were put off several times, changed the properties that were promised to us a lot of times, so it was not an easy process. We have, especially for our finance system, we have a system of direct loans, which is like really small credits from lots of different peoples that are recognized by our bank as equity. So we don't need to bring up money by our own, but lots of people base their trust in us and give us small amounts of money, and with that we can take out could take out the loan from the bank to actually finance all of this. Also, really important part was that we did a lot of work by ourselves. Overall, it was like an amount of probably going into like €1 million of work that we did ourselves in the construction, and also a huge part of this was recognized as equity again by the bank. And yeah, also lots of funding that we secured, like over 8 million. So we did a lot of work there in this regard. And to wrap it up, few challenges and maybe lessons learned. What was like something through the whole phase is like that, as if you come there as just students, you like have to do some work to really be taken serious. And also like, but I think that's a problem that all of us have, like knowledge management and transfers. And also what we kind of underestimated was like the transition from like the project construction phase in our project to like actually living here and day-to-day life. And what was really important from our thing was that we had quite a lot of external advice and support from different groups, organization, programs, and which was really, really helpful to us. And also we made quite a lot of work in terms of public relations work, which also paid off a big time with like influencing the city, for example, on that level, and getting in money. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to have you in the network. I suggest, after these two quite inspiring examples from Germany and established projects, we move a bit more Eastern Europe to Hungary, and more specifically in Budapest, where there is a very motivated group of students who are trying to implement their projects. The floor is yours.
Thanks, and Julie, can you share our presentation? Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think we can start with introducing ourselves. We work in the cooperation of two organizations, which both of the organizations we are currently part of. One is a student organization, which lives together also, but it's starting to lose the housing. And the other one is an organization for collaborative real estate development. And can we go to the first slide, please, Julie? Can we gain control? Yeah. Okay, so first I want to talk about the context in which we are operating. There is a housing crisis in Budapest. Our community is based in Budapest. I'm sure, as you know, it causes a lot of mobility issues for students and young people because it's really hard to pay the rents for this group especially. And the first organization, which we are currently part of, is College of Advanced Studies for social theory. It is a 43-year-old organization. It lives together, and it also studies together in critical theory and practices. It's made of approximately 50 people yearly, and it is in very strong connection to other grassroots organizations in Hungary. It is completely self-managed and democratic in its structure. We work in working groups, and everyone has their tasks in the community. And it is linked to a Budapest-based university, which is going through a major neoliberal shift. And caused by this, the housing is getting unaffordable for most of our members. And stemming from this, we have to move to new housing. And we don't own the housing place we currently live at. It is owned by the university, and we want to create a student cooperative for providing housing. Yes.
Can you move to the next slide, please?
Thank you. And this is the other organization which works in real estate development, collaborative real estate development. It has already created the first housing cooperative of Budapest because housing cooperatives are not that strong in Budapest yet. And it also created Kazan Community House, which is a collectively operated house or community space where mostly civil society organizations work. And we started our common project together approximately 3 years ago. And we have gone through many phases ever since that. And there is one member of tech working part-time on the project. It's Adel. And yeah, the main goal is to create a new dormitory space for the student organization.
Yeah. Can you move on, please? Thanks. Yeah. So when we first started to work with like this organization to build like a student housing co-op, since then we have found like a building which is on a former industrial site in Budapest, because this was the cheapest site, and this was the cheapest building we could find now, but it's much bigger than we could have used. So we are trying to have like multiple functions and create a community house which offers like a dormitory for the college we are working for now. And we also want to do like affordable housing in like apartments in other store. Yeah. And also we want to have like community offices and community spaces for like grassroots organizations, because we have seen like this need for space in the Kazan community house as well. So there are a lot more organizations that need affordable space. And we also want to work with artists who could have like workshops and studios in the house, and also a warehouse for a food cooperative. And we want to have like a renovation that is sustainable, and we want to have it planned as a community. So we have tried to start the community planning process. And first we started to work with like the students from the college, and we started to identify the needs and plan what places and community spaces the students need. And also we have started to map out like the future tenants, the NGOs, the cooperatives, and also like people from the neighborhood, what spaces are needed for them, and try to include it in the architectural plans. And we also learn about co-housing and the ways we could operate in this whole big community. And now we are putting together a financial plan and started negotiating with the owner of the building And our plan is to own collectively the building together with like the owner. And now we prepare the financial plan for the energy efficient renovation, and we are trying to create an investing structure which allows us to be like the owners, but we still need to have like the money to be start the renovation. And we are currently applying for EU funding and smaller grants, and also started to collaborate with the local municipality. And now we are trying to find like more partners and supporters and then investors to start the project maybe in a year. We hope so. And that was all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting project, definitely, and hopefully it will be successful. We can jump now to the UK, Scott.
Sure, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to quickly spin around. There we go. Okay, share screen. Sorry, tech problem. 1 second. Okay, is that showing up? Oops, just quickly letting it there. Apologies, should have. There we go. How is that showing up on everyone's end? Is that sharing properly? Sweet. Hello everyone, I'm Scott. I'm the current chair of Student Cooperative Homes based in the UK. Very briefly, we'll touch on it a bit more with a representative federation of student housing cooperatives across the UK. Notable, we also have a member in the Republic of Ireland who are really awesome members. So a little bit about the UK's kind of history, the movement's history, why we formed student co-op homes and things like that. So we currently have a backdrop of very few student housing cooperatives by the time 2012 rolls along. And for context, the UK hasn't had a history of strong housing cooperatives. We only make up about 1% of all housing in the UK around this time. There is a strong history of some housing co-ops in some localities such as Liverpool, Brighton, and some in Birmingham as well, and a strong patch in London and the southeast of England, but there's no real student housing cooperatives at that time. We did have some student housing cooperatives in the past that are worth mentioning. One was in Belfast called Shack, which is an organisation that flourished for a long time but lost its focus on students and unfortunately just doesn't exist anymore. And we had an organisation called Student Cooperative Dwellings, which went on to become the Sanford Housing Cooperative, which no longer has a focus on students but focuses upon housing young single individuals in London. So this idea has been bubbling along under the surface in the UK for quite some time, but it hasn't quite come to fruition by 2012. And around the 2010s and 2012 onwards, you start seeing an interest build on the background of the movements that are ongoing at that time around free education and the increase of tuition fees at that time. And we also had people who were there at the beginning of our movement who went over to North America and were inspired by their co-ops at that time. And then we had Birmingham Student Housing Cooperative and others begin to be formed around this time. So those are some of the first cooperatives, which they acquired a large 8-bed property that became a 9-bed property. How they were funded. So a new idea that hasn't really got much fruition. How do we get it going? Vivian probably hates, because I believe he's in the meeting, hates so he probably doesn't know I put this picture in here of him. But we had support from the wider cooperative movement to establish the first student housing cooperatives and prototype this idea. So the Phone Cooperative very generously bought £300,000 to establish 2 student housing cooperatives, Birmingham and Sheffield, based upon the model, very similar to the North American model, to show that it worked. We also had our big one at around the same time, and I think Mike's in the room as well, so hello to Mike. Edinburgh Student Housing Cooperative was founded at the same time in 2014, managed to take over a vacant halls of residence in a really lovely part of Edinburgh, it has to be said. They started a campaign around forming a housing cooperative, passed a referendum, formed a partnership with the local housing association to get access to property. So we had a lot of good partnerships for these first student housing cooperatives that established the beginnings of the movement. We had interest from all over the UK based upon these really great examples starting, but we had the problem, we don't have any dedicated housing cooperative loans at this point that focus around students. how do students raise the funding wasn't entirely obvious at this point in time. These are so new, we don't really have a financial track record to lean on. And students were perceived as high risk. One of the things we've had to overcome with time is the notion that students don't do this, which of course we're looking at a room full of people here who definitely do. So we founded what was called Student Cooperative Homes. Around 2017, we agreed to found it. 2018, we got around to doing it with the help of Cooperatives UK and the retail cooperatives, our shop co-ops. The idea being similar to NASCO in North America's properties division, where we have a central organization that would own the property on behalf of its members, and they could take mortgages and loans against that to help other people in other places or grow the existing members. But also student housing cooperatives have some very unique challenges, and sometimes they need specialist support. So also trying to have that place for support for some housing co-ops when they need it. So we formed a multi-stakeholder or hybrid co-op structure where we have two types of members. User members are our housing cooperatives, who each have, which collectively have 75% control of the organization, and there's 25% there for supportive individuals, co-ops, etc., who want to help us by helping bring finance to support acquisitions. And we have a board of directors of 12 people, 8 of which are student housing cooperatives and 4 are from the investor members. And part of that is also kind of an intergenerational thing of transferring knowledge from a much older generation of cooperators to a newer generation. So we're kind of bringing that to the table as well. And so the mission of Student Cooperative Homes, as stated, is to build a thriving, large-scale movement of student housing cooperatives across the UK and to act as the federation representing them for lobbying and things like this. And so we have, as it stands, 3 existing student housing cooperatives in the UK. We have Edinburgh and Birmingham, but we also have Sea Salt, which is based in Brighton in the south of England, who are the most recent co-op to get into property, and they've done an amazing job getting there. We also were saying we bought Birmingham. So the Phone Cooperative purchased the Birmingham property, we bought it this year, and so we are now directly in ownership of some of our members' properties, which is great. It's also worth saying that there is still loads of active groups across the UK wanting to do this and working towards establishing more of these co-ops. So Nottingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Bristol, Belfast, and as I said, we have one in Ireland in Cork, who are all really great members. And we do get together in the sort of way. So it's worth saying we have got together on a European level before, which was really nice in 2022. We also got together as in the UK and Ireland in 2023. I should give credits. I think Anka, who is professor at the University of Sussex, helped fund an event at the University of Sussex. So we got people together and we collaborated and networked people. And I want to show what students can do. So these are some examples of the renovation work that the Edinburgh Student Housing Cooperative did to their property, in particular the basement project. I can ask Mike probably to speak about the practicalities of all this. There's a lot of work, but they've won awards for this, and they've create these great community spaces and community resources. And it's worth saying that the space that you can see in these pictures is not just for the students, but the wider community can access this space and hire it out, which is really great. So we're trying to also look beyond the student experience and just being for students, trying to undo some of the damaging narrative around students are a problem, which we have in the UK. We take up all the houses, we don't look after things. Well, we clearly can if you give us the tools. In terms of what Student Core Homes is doing at the moment, we're working with partners and looking for partnerships. So we're trying to work with the Church of England in a number of areas where they own property. They're a long-standing historic landowner in England. We've got some interesting avenues coming through that. It's our 10-year anniversary for our members. So Edinburgh and Birmingham are 10-year anniversaries this year, and it's great. They've survived. They've proven people who said they would be here for a few years and they would go bust. Well, no, they didn't. We're just undergoing a strategy review, which we're looking to start soon. With the ownership of the Birmingham property being ours, we're going to start doing some upgrading and planning kind of next steps for that. Aiming to have a physical event in the next academic year, alongside online forums such as this, but also ones within the UK and other members. And we've also been starting to develop an affiliation program for student unions and engaging our national unions of students in Ireland and across the UK. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and very perfect timing. I don't know, Julie, if we have someone from NASCO or from the United States. As we mentioned, they're quite an inspiration, and it will be great to have a few words from them.
Yeah, Maggie is with us. So Maggie, do you want to go ahead and share your presentation.
Absolutely, yeah. Give me 1 second here. Okay.
It's
Sorry.
loading.
Is it loading? Okay.
Yeah, okay, we can see it now.
Can you all see my speaker notes also?
Nope.
Nope.
Perfect.
Nope.
That's great. Those are just for me.
We can
Okay.
see all your tabs that are.
Oh, you
at the
can?
top.
Okay. Well, don't tab shame me. There are many, but just you can just pretend they're not there. Unless
Right.
it's distracting, I can try to.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry about that. Oops. Nope. Gonna go back one. Okay, so yeah, just briefly to introduce myself, my name is Maggie. I work for NASCO, which is the North American Students of Cooperation. We are based, our headquarters is technically in Chicago, but we serve the US and Canada. And we are an association of group equity housing co-ops in that region. My title is Director of Property Services, but to explain what exactly I do, I think gets too in the weeds for like why we're meeting here today. So I'll leave it at that. But okay, so how it started, there is a lot of prehistory that you can get into regarding the history of student co-ops in the United States, kind of the buildup for what ended up becoming NASCO and all of that, but I don't think we have time for that today. If you are interested, somebody in our movement did write a book on this topic called Hasten Slowly and You Will Arrive. His name is Jim Jones. He worked for NASCO. He's worked for a lot of student housing co-ops in the US, has a lot of knowledge on that topic for sure. But basically, just after many years of movement from students on matters related to socialism, democracy, autonomy, the desire for housing stability and food stability, kind of a lot of things people have mentioned today, that sort of was building up in the, in the lead up to what became NASCO. And NASCO did officially incorporate on November 9th, 1969. And sort of that time of year is now the time of year that we have, we kind of convene our members and our allies for an educational conference that we call NASCO Institute. And a couple people here have actually been to that before a couple of times, which is really awesome. It's kind of our flagship conference. We do a lot of other type of programming throughout the year, but this is sort of the big one. The first NASCO Institute was in 1977, and I included a little snippet of a flyer from the second one, which was in 1978. We still hold it in Ann Arbor, Michigan at the Cooperative Council, which is actually the co-op that I live in, and sort of was the co-op that convened everyone to begin with that ended up making NASCO. Sorry, I tried to find pictures I thought would fit well for this part. The bottom right corner is from NASCO Institute 2019, when we actually met in Texas instead of Ann Arbor. And upper right corner are Kathy and Dave Friedrichs, who were the first employees that NASCO ever hired. And that was in the 70s as well. Okay, so numbers wise, we represent roughly 35 member co-ops, of which there are about 4,000 people living in those co-ops in the US and Canada. And to run NASCO as the association for these co-ops, we currently have 4 full-time staff, and we'll be adding a part-time staff person in a couple of months. And NASCO, is over 50 years old, so the organization has seen a lot of different fluctuations in how many staff we have at various times. It's been as many as 4, or as few as 4. It's been as many as like 7. So it just kind of depends on the time point that you look at in history for that, but that's where we are now. We have different membership levels, kind of like Scott was saying with student co-op homes, but the main category for membership that we have is, we call it an active member co-op. So that is like, you have a co-op with, maybe you have a student, taking my own co-op that I live in right now as an example. We're a student housing co-op. We have about 500 members, and our co-op belongs to NASCO. as an active member co-op, and we kind of collectively are members of it. You can also be an individual member of NASCO, and you would pay sort of a lower fee to just be like one single person that's saying, you know, that you have like a stake in the group equity housing co-op movement, and you want to financially support that by being a member of NASCO. Members get benefits from being part of NASCO. So we provide technical assistance, training. You know, we consult with co-ops about issues that they're having. It's really just a wide suite of things that we try to offer members. So how do we work together? On the left there, that is our mission. Our mission is to further our vision through work with campus cooperatives by providing resources, assisting development, and encouraging campus cooperatives to continue active participation in the North American co-op sector. So how does that look in practice? You know, we do abide by Rothschild cooperative principles. We honor the co-op values that are outlined by the ICA. We actually are two nonprofit organizations, NASCO and NASCO Properties. NASCO Properties is a nonprofit that is actually owned by NASCO. Not to get too like into the weeds again, the structure can be a little confusing at first, but basically we're two nonprofits. We have two board of directors, one for each, and we have the 4 full-time staff that support that work. Our board is elected by our membership, and staff work in a collective, non-hierarchical structure that doesn't have like a traditional boss, if you would call it that. So co-op development in North America, is an interesting thing. And it definitely, the interesting thing about NASCO is that because we work in Canada and the US, the landscape for co-op development is quite different in those places. But most of our members are in the US, and we have done a lot of co-op development assistance in the US. So here I thought that a recent project that NASCO assisted with would be sort of an interesting case study. This is the Students Cooperative in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a 1-house, 30-member co-op that is like right on campus, right in the middle of Minneapolis. And they went and kind of underwent this period of turmoil where they were really struggling to continue being a co-op, and kind of came under fire from the university, who didn't like sort of the reputation that they were developing. And the co-op was at major risk of just being shut down, but we kind of came into this situation and helped them pull together all the funding that they needed in order to completely renovate the house. So these are some pictures I wanted to show you, comparing a before and after, just like sort of displaying the level of detail that went into all the rent. I mean, they stripped everything basically and kind of like blank slated it. And I think this project just captures a lot of dimensions that exist within the current landscape for student housing co-op development in the US, which is a relatively niche area of co-op development work. There are not a lot of people doing that work in North America. In the US, the co-op emphasis, like the biggest co-op industry in the US, is agricultural. So funding this project, it had to be sourced from many different entities. Kind of like Scott was mentioning, student housing is seen as a risky investment by some people. So we did have lenders that pulled out kind of at the last minute or declined to support it because they thought it was too risky. So we ended up kind of just pulling in a lot of different sources for that. There is sort of a student housing development fund that exists. It's called the Kagawa Reinvestment Fund. That's sort of been like a long-standing funding support for student co-op development. Although the loans that come from that fund are very modest and kind of meant to be more like bridge funding for like just funding like little gaps that you might have in your overall plan for funding the co-op. And, you know, in general, we try to work with just co-op friendly lenders and funds. For example, the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast, we have some loans with them that we've used to help support co-ops. So just that, and here's another just before and after picture of the students project, because it was really quite an impressive thing that they did. And they're rebooting now. They're going to re-membership soon, and it's really exciting. Okay. So kind of ongoing challenges, I split these up into things that I thought were relevant for NASCO as an association of co-ops, and then for co-ops that belong to NASCO or member co-ops. So our primary funding structure at NASCO is membership dues from, these active member co-ops. And basically what can happen is if a co-op is experiencing some kind of crisis that affects them financially, it also impacts their ability to be members of NASCO. And since we rely on that funding to provide the services that we do, we can't almost like provide services to those co-ops that are struggling the most because they can't pay into the bucket of money that exists for having us support them, if that makes sense. So that's a little challenging. We do get grant funding and donations, but a lot of our income comes from members. So that's a challenge. I think there's just less interest in group equity as a model in the US. There's a big pivot towards limited equity co-ops where you would kind of profit more from being part of the co-op or like leave the co-op with money from having partially owned a property. The US government isn't especially interested in housing cooperatives. Again, the focus being more with agriculture on the government side of things. Restrictive zoning in cities that prevents unrelated people from living together in the same house. So like group housing has to be zoned a certain way. That's very challenging for a lot of people to overcome if they're trying to make a co-op. And just that sometimes NASCO staff find itself with limited amount of capacity depending on kind of what's going on with the sector and like having a limited amount of staff to work with. For member co-ops, like a lot of people have mentioned, rising cost of housing, building costs and real estate is a huge barrier to starting a housing co-op. A lot of co-ops are seeing other really heavy increases in costs, like building insurance has gone up a lot in the last year or two. And in many ways, a lot of us are still recovering from COVID, to be honest. That was a really big hit for a lot of co-ops in the US. So these are just some of the things that we kind of deal with in this landscape. And it sounds like maybe some similarities and some differences. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your presentations. Really interesting.
Thank you, Maggie. Julie, is there someone else to present?
Yeah, we have Lily from Berkeley.
Great.
From Berkeley Student Co-op, so staying in the US, but changing over to the West Coast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna get my slides set up really quickly. Okay. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, awesome. Hello, I'm Lily, and nice to meet everybody. I'm very excited to be joining this for the BSc to be joining. I believe it's like one of our first times entering the sphere, but yeah, so I'll just jump right into it. Oh, okay. So first of all, I'm Lily. I'm the recruitment coordinator for the Berkeley Student Cooperatives. So I apologize if this presentation is a bit more kind of informative. I'm usually telling like students like, come move in, this is what we're about. So I try to incorporate a little bit of history and more of the like logistics into it. But I'll start off by talking about our mission and vision. So our mission is to provide, oops, my bad. Our mission is to provide a quality, low-cost cooperative housing community to university students. So this includes students both at UC Berkeley or any of the colleges near San Francisco or Berkeley. We have San Francisco State students, sometimes Stanford students who commute. And by doing this, we provide an educational opportunity for students who might not otherwise be able to afford a university education. So the Berkeley Student Cooperative is actually a 501c3 nonprofit housing cooperative that provides this affordable housing to students of any university. We also provide housing for students of any age. This could mean reentry students, students at a community college, just anybody who's enrolled in courses at any college. So a very short history of the BSc. As Maggie was saying, the cooperatives in the US do have a very long, extensive, and political history that I personally think is very interesting. But the first house of the BSC was established in 1933 to increase housing sources for students and to combat racial and religious housing discrimination. So during the Great Depression, there was a massive, massive housing crisis in the US, and students found that it was especially hard to have solid housing, as they're often people with shorter leases and are just moving around more often. So the 14 gentlemen in the right of the screen, they established their own first housing co-op. Through the 1930s and the 1940s, the BSC was able to see more expansion through, I believe, like low interest loans from the government, from generous donations from people. They were able to add on houses. They opened the first all women's co-op, Sherman Hall, which houses around 40 people. And throughout the 1950s and 1960s, they opened their first co-ed house, Casa Zimbabwe. This is our largest house in the cooperative system. I believe it holds up to 120 people. And this is also the location of our central office. So our central office is where all of our food, supplies, and our administration is. Through the 1970s to the 1990s, the Berkeley Student Cooperatives expanded into the South Side area south of the university, and they opened a few theme houses, including our African American theme house and our LGBTQIA house. Now the BSC is the largest student cooperative system in North America. And let me just double check. Are you guys okay with my slides? You can see them all right?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so to get into the BSC properties, we have over 1,300 student members living in or boarding at our 17 houses and 3 apartment cooperatives. So the BSC is pretty huge. We have houses on both the north end of the UC Berkeley campus and the south end of the UC Berkeley campus. As you can see, it's a bit different than some of the other co-ops we've been talking about. They're all pretty condensed within the same area. And this provides a lot of benefits. I would say that one of the biggest ones is the co-op community is very, very strong around Berkeley. You'll always be meeting people around who live in this co-op or that co-op. And yeah, all of these houses, they range in size, our smallest one being 17 people and our largest one being 140 people, which was our building that was built specifically to be a student cooperative. And our properties are also all very different ages. I believe our newest one was built in the 1990s, and our oldest one, I believe, is the house that I'm in right now, which is from 1890. So there's varying degrees of types of housing situations that you can live in, and the maintenance that is being done on them. Okay, and I just wanted to give a couple of examples of some of the houses that we live in. I believe mine isn't on here, but you can see that some of them are retrofitted homes that are a bit older. Some of them are newer, like more dorm style buildings that were built to be student cooperatives. Okay, and moving on to our themed units. So something special about the Berkeley Student Cooperatives is that we actually offer themed housing. What this means is that we're trying to help fulfill our mission of helping students who are like historically marginalized or students from vulnerable populations have safer places to live and places where they can find community. So our houses that are themed include our POC theme house, which is for people of color and BIPOC identifying students, Afro-themed house for African, Black, and Caribbean students, Oscar Wilde / Johnson Rivera House, which is for our LGBTQIA students, Sherman and Hoyt, which are for our female identifying students, Coin, which is our substance-free and academic themed house, and Loughlin, which is our vegetarian house. And these houses just kind of exist to really solidify the BSC's mission of providing for the students who need like important housing situations the most. Okay, so to get into our rates, so for our fall and spring semesters, it's around 4,500 per semester. That comes out to around 950 per month. I promise you, those are actually good rates for the Bay Area. The Bay Area in California is one of the most expensive places to live in the country, unfortunately. But with these rates, not only do you get a bed, a desk, and a dresser included, but you also have all of your utilities, all of your Wi-Fi, and all of the food that you can need included within your rent. I'll get into the food aspect in a little bit. But you also have like furniture, a rich social environment, as well as access to co-op wide workshops, social and educational events, and additional amenities depending on each co-op. So every house is different since they're all built at different times, but some houses have the space for a study room, a gym, band room, rooftops. My house has a tree house. There's many, many different things that have just come into the co-ops that students have put time into, that have popped up around the different houses. Additionally, financial aid also applies to all the houses in the co-ops, no matter what university or college you go to. And we also offer rent credit scholarships for EOP and DSP students. So a bit more context, EOP and DSP is for students who are low income or who receive accommodations from their school. So we offer rent credit scholarships so that those students have a little bit less of a rent burden living in the co-ops. Also, just wanted to iterate that we have priority populations. So this is just one more step that we're taking to help ensure that students who need the housing the most are able to get it. So all of these populations here are people that are given priority on the wait list. So they basically would get an easier, quicker selection of which house they would want to live in. So this is our educational opportunity program students who are low income, disabled students, education abroad students, transfer student status, and undocumented student status. So I wanted to say the 3 big aspects of the BSc. This is very much one of my recruitment slides, but I would say the big three about the BSc is the food system, work shift and unit level management, and the cooperative and communal living environment. These are the 3 things that I want to let people know before they move in. So how do we run? We run through unit level management. Each house is democratically run, and we all contribute to the labor to help keep the housing costs affordable. Each house has this list of managers, as you see below, and each manager runs for the position, and they must have a majority vote to win. And basically, they keep track of all of the day-to-day operations. The kitchen manager helps order the food, work shift manager delegates work, network makes sure that we have Wi-Fi, social helps plan parties for certain houses, and habitability helps to make sure the houses are actually habitable, are livable, and safe. We also have a BSc board of directors that make budget and governance decisions for the BSc. This board consists of 29 voting members, with each house or apartment having 1 to 4 representatives. So it's a very democratic process. Usually the BSc president, VPs, and the executive director are also students, either grad students or returning students. So it's a very student-run, democratically elected process. Board meets every 2 to 3 weeks during the fall and spring semesters, sometimes more often than that if they have more pressing issues to discuss. And the houses themselves also have weekly councils. So the weekly councils at each house, they're usually run by the house president, who's also elected. And we discuss the smaller day-to-day things like small renovations, purchasing decisions, just the basic house level consensus operations. So work shift, this is how we're able to keep our costs low. I'm sure that you people as cooperative people know this quite well, but it's very good to just explain to those who are very new. We get a lot of new co-opers at our houses. That those who live in the apartments contribute 12 hours of labor. Those who lived at the houses contribute 5 hours of labor, and just these 5 hours a week are enough to help keep those costs low. It's things like cooking dinner and cleaning bathrooms, things that you would already have been doing. And the nice thing about the co-ops is that students who have disabled student priority or disabled student status can receive accommodations through the housing supervisor. So also the BSc, I would be interested to hear more about the other international co-ops in regards to food, but the Berkeley student co-ops have a food system. So this basically means that within your rent, you have access to all you can eat food 24/7 in your house. And members also help like prepare dinners at the end of the night. That's part of like the work shift, but basically this includes all of your like dry goods, all of your dairy needs, fruits and vegetables. And you have access to this kitchen of all of the things that you could need whenever you want. I personally found that it's very nice, especially in Berkeley and the Bay where like even like food costs are rising a little bit. It definitely helps keep things cheaper doing it through the co-op. What this looks like is the kitchen manager will order food through Central, and Central has like a food and supplies area where they'll make shipments out to the separate houses. As you saw on the map earlier, we're all pretty close to each other, so it's not that much of a problem getting food and different supplies out to each other. And lastly, the cooperative community. So I believe that this is one thing that really, really makes the Berkeley Student Cooperative strong. We have been around for 90 years now. I believe we celebrated our 90th anniversary the other year. And it's just through really these strong values that we've had as a co-op and as a community. So just want to highlight these main 4 that they had when they established co-ops, which are anti-discrimination, access to education, expansion, and member education. So what this means is that offering this housing to students regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, or national origin is very, very important to us. We value having people from all backgrounds. That's how we're able to run and eliminate prejudice and discrimination in housing. Access to housing, we really want to provide students who have limited resources this housing first and foremost, so that they could have the opportunity to go to school if it was a decision between being able to pay for housing and being able to go to school. Expansion. So this was a big one back in the beginning. We're not expanding as much anymore since we already have so many houses to manage. But the BSC is always working to continually maintain and to improve their facilities. We just had a really, really big renovation of one of our houses to help treat asbestos, since it was a very old house. And so we're always working to make the houses more livable and more safe. And never education. It's very, very important to the BSC that students and also like employees alike are in a continuous education designed to help eliminate prejudice and discrimination. So what this looks like is that the Berkeley Student Co-ops has multiple consent working groups. We have restorative justice groups, different things like that go around to the houses. They give talks if the houses want to invite them over. And this just helps to keep the Berkeley Student Co-ops a safe and a fun place to live. And I believe that was the end of my presentation. You can check us out on this QR code and our website, and my email is there as well. You can email me at rc.bsc.coop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lily. And thank you all for all these really great and interesting presentations, really. I think, Julie, we're done with the presentations, right? That was the last one. Okay, so the idea, the idea was to have a small interactive exchange also between the speakers, because the idea of these spaces is also to learn from each other and to get a little bit more deeper into each project. I would suggest, because we have about 25 minutes left, we had 6 speakers who were really efficient with the time. We can maybe use these 20 minutes to have this exchange. Maybe I won't be guiding the discussion. I suggest that each speaker asks a question to another speaker from who they want to know a little bit more about the organization or specific challenges they have addressed. And yeah, we can see that there are many different contexts, but quite similar challenges, quite different also projects regarding their state of establishment, some very old ones, some very new ones, some very experienced ones. So yeah, I would say that we can start maybe with Adele and Orsi, if you want to ask to another speaker a specific question, and then the speaker can give like a direct answer to your question.
Maybe I think I have a question for the Collegium Academicum, because we've been thinking about like the same, that we want to have like a lot of like small investors, and I wanted to ask, how were you able to find like 600 people, and like the process of getting, maybe I would be interested in that.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of work and speaking to people. I think in the beginning it was mostly like people in the project that like had 500 euros from, I don't know, their grandmother or something, or like families. And so because some of like from the people who had like more financially sound family, and that was like the beginnings for the first few parts, but we did a lot of like informational stands, like on the market here in the city, where every week we were on the market and spoke to people and tried to convince them about our project. Also tried to writing to our professors at the university or so. And then also in more steps like really much of public relations work. We were like in nationwide media a lot of times, and really a lot of people that work really hard to push that and like constantly have like something in the media to like get this to the public. And it's mostly like that. It's an important part for each of our members to like try to convince people, like, or write to your former teachers at your former school or something like that. Yeah, just try to speak to everyone that you could think about that could possibly have some money for that, and would be like interested in like this kind of social thing. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Does this answer your question, Ada? Yeah. Maybe Hannes and Linda, you can ask a question to another speaker as you were speaking.
Well, maybe I'm really bad with names. Lily from Berkeley. Maybe what I like we are really new to the like day-to-day business of running our co-op. You have like up to 90 years experience in that. Like not you personally, but your maybe what's like what would you say are like the biggest challenges in like day-to-day operations, and what are like strategies for like solving them, overcoming them?
Yeah, of course. I'll try my best because so I'm the recruitment coordinator. I work under the housing office. I don't interact with them that much. I think day-to-day operations, it becomes difficult after a certain point in size. I forget how big you guys are in Heidelberg, right?
Yeah.
100.
How large was your co-op? How many people?
250 in total.
350, okay. Yeah, it definitely gets difficult after you reach a certain threshold because I think just like management can be hard. Yeah, I would say like managing 100 or 1,300 people that are at 17 different houses with 17 different house managers, 17 different maintenance managers, like there's people fall through the cracks every so often. And if you don't have people at your central office level that are very on top of it, because we have like salary workers that work at the central office. So like this person, Anton, takes care of all the kitchen managers. This person takes care of all the maintenance managers. If that person at central is not doing their job well, then things can kind of really fall apart. So in order to have like a bigger group, I guess like you need to have really good people at the top who are very good at managing things, very good at organizing, and keeping things on time, as well as also like tracking costs. Costs can be a very, very, very big issue, especially for the BSc that's pretty old. I believe we have a couple of low interest loans, like I mentioned, and a couple of loans from like the Wells Fargo Bank. But it can be hard to like fully keep up with those since we are experiencing lower occupancy. Yeah, just not falling behind with money is like very, very important. I would say those are my big things, like just making sure that everybody's organized in their management and really like keeping a solid record of the books.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lily, if you want to ask a question.
Todd had his hand up as well. Maybe you can go after.
Oh, yeah, you can go.
slightly volunteered myself. I suppose it's just an interesting one that kind of asks sort of everyone a little bit, the speakers, but kind of relevant to your organizations was how much were your organizations aware? I mean, obviously, NASCO is somewhat of an exception. Like everyone in North America kind of knows there's other student housing cooperatives one way or another, that they're not the only one. But particularly for like the European co-ops here, when did you become aware of like others around you and how? How did you like basically how you ended up here? How did you become aware of each other? And what role did that play in like your development? Did you see or hear of something somewhere else and you went, oh, why don't we have that? Or was there like a different way that you guys came to this solution of like a co-op housing solution? Sorry, I know I haven't pointed that in anyone in particular. I thought it'd just be interesting. It's a matter of replies. There, you may have to poke that at people.
Okay, let's see. Jens.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Scott. Can you repeat? I wrote in the chat. So
No problem. Sorry, my question was basically, we all have our organizations, and we have our own stories of how we were founded, but particularly for the newer ones, and for those of us like the Studentendorf, how aware were you of other projects like you, and when did you become aware?
we were not aware of other projects because we were so much involved in our own fight, and how to manage 1,000 rooms. It was such a big thing we had before us, like a big hill we had to climb on. So and we had no idea about getting the money, no idea about how to reconstruct the houses. We had to learn everything, and we were still at the end of our studies. So we all studied something other, like me, German literature. So, and all of the people said, you will fail. So it was a lot about not to fail. And now, as we are settled, and we can say we didn't fail. So with this, I'm sorry. This is we had time to look out for other projects. Now we can share our experiences. What I think is really important. Also about our mistakes, not only about the things we reached.
Maybe Hannes and Linda.
Yeah, I think we quite quickly in the beginning stumbled upon the Mietshäuser-Syndikat, and there we had like our network in the beginning, and that was like the area where we collaborated, and we are quite a bit of like a unicorn in this network, since it's mostly like normal buildings with like 10 to 20 people, a few families, like something like that. So normal rent apartments in the city, basically. And with our 250 people and young people, we are standing out quite a bit. But yeah, I think mostly here to this, we came through Jens Uwe, who reached out to us, and like he found us and was like, hey, nice project. Do you want to meet up, have a chat sometime? And introduced us to this round here. But also, I think before that, we actually stumbled about over the co-op in Edinburgh, because some of our people were like on holiday in Scotland, and they just used ChatGPT to ask about student co-ops, and a lot of fake ones that it imagined about. But it found like the one in Edinburgh, and they were like, yeah, we're on vacation there anyway. Let's just have a look around there. Yeah.
Right. Maybe Adele and Orsi?
Yeah, so we started out of necessity, basically, because we are losing the current housing we have. And then I believe we teamed up with the Alliance for Collaborative Real Estate Development. And through that, I think Adele met Leah in Barcelona last year. And I think that's how we kind of got to know that there are other examples. And yeah, I think since we are still like really in the phase of development, we can learn a lot. I think it's a bit of a struggle that oftentimes I feel like these initiatives grow out of public support and also like really generous loans or good loan agreements. And we don't really have those opportunities in Hungary. But it's really interesting to get to know all these ways that these puzzles come together and form these cooperatives.
Thanks. Maybe some freestyle here. Maybe someone from the student co-op homes, I can see that there are many people in the room. I can answer Scott's question. I don't know.
Vivian or Benita, you're being volunteered.
Well, so the question was, how did I find out about the other people in the room? I mean, I think it was Scott who helped, who made a lot of these connections initially, actually. But going right back to the early days of student co-op homes, it was I think 2015. We had a conference, and the phone co-op also helped with that one, and we had a speaker from NASCO who talked to us about how they organize things. I suspect Scott was involved in bringing them over, but maybe not. Maybe it was someone else. But it's really, I've just really want to say I've enjoyed this evening a lot. I found it really inspiring. I think this is building on a group that's been meeting regularly to try and get this European network of student housing co-ops off the ground and turn it into something more solid, with this, steadfast support of Leah and Julie, who've really worked so hard on it. And I hope that some more of you will join our regular meetings, because that's how I think we can make this into something more solid. And actually a lot of those of us in the meeting, so we're not students, we're just trying to make this thing happen. So it would be great, and I know students are often very busy with other things, but it would be great if we could have some more students in those meetings as well. Thank you everybody for coming along. And I would also like to just plug, as I did in the chat, the Young European Cooperatives Network, which is linked to Cooperatives Europe. It's trying to bring together young cooperatives. By the way, young means under 40, so a lot of people qualify there. And it's just really thinking about, the next generation of people who will take the cooperative movement forward in Europe. And to me, the reason I'm so keen on supporting student housing co-ops is that, students are really a key part of that next generation, and experiencing the positive impact of a co-op in your life at that point seems like such an important way to understand what the potential of co-ops actually is to be transformative in the world. So thank you everybody for what you're doing, and let's keep this movement going and build it. Sorry, I don't think I answered your question at all, really. I just think I just used it as a soapbox for my story, what I wanted to say.
I think you made a very smooth transition to the conclusion, Vivian. I don't know if there is any other question. Maybe you can take one more question and then we should maybe wrap up. Anybody in the room, really? Feel free.
I have it's not really a question, more so of a comment, if that's okay. If you guys have any students that are studying abroad internationally, let them know about us, because we have tons and tons of vacancies for the fall, and international students do get priority. So share this with your friends and family that are thinking about coming to SF or Berkeley.
Well noted.
Yeah, I was going to say on that note, it's an idea that's been floating since NASCO and Student Corp Homes kind of got initial contact to kind of have these kind of protocols. And actually, when me and Jens were at the last NASCO Institute, the Canadian co-ops were really interested in like trying to set up these ways of helping students exchange. So it's something it's something I'm certainly interested in. I think it keeps getting brought up by everyone, like, oh, how do I exchange to go here? How do I exchange to go there? So I think it's something we probably should talk about in the future, how we get something up and running for that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so if there is no more question, because it's already almost time to wrap up. The idea is to continue this kind of spaces, of course, and to continue exchanging also between the projects holders and the students. So we will try to organize more spaces like this with the group, but really, like it was mentioned, it would be great to have more students involved in the discussions and the organization of this kind of spaces, and we will make sure to share with you a timeline and on what is actually planned. One thing that we are trying to organize now is an in-person meeting, because that's a little bit how we came together at some point. It was in 2022 in Zurich and in Geneva, and it was really great to have all these people for several days together, thinking together and sharing experiences and learning from each other. So we are trying to organize a similar event in the framework of the Habitat Network, which we are coordinating at Urbamonde, and of which quite a few people here in the room are members. So this would be organized the first week of October, and we will be working on that. This will be the occasion to celebrate the 10 years of the Cohabitat Network, and we will be organizing this in Geneva. So we will keep in touch with everybody. The idea is to have a whole day at least of exchanges. This would be great to reproduce this kind of experience. And yeah, so I don't know if anybody else from the group, Julie, you want to add something? And of course, if you also have any questions to the speakers for the projects, don't hesitate to write per email, and we'll make sure also to bring the questions and answers together and share them with everybody.
Yeah, no, I want to thank the speakers and Leah for hosting. Thanks for presenting on your cooperative, and yeah, we'll be sharing any news and updates and future events with folks who signed up, and then we'll, as I mentioned earlier, we'll share the recording so that in case anyone missed it, you can share it with them. And yeah, let's keep in touch, and if you're interested in being part of the network for the student cooperative building of an association in Europe, please let me know, and I can add you to our list. And yeah, because as Vivian mentioned earlier, a lot of us are not students. We're just interested in getting this off the ground and letting you run with it. So that's that's our aim. We're hoping to set up an official network so that the student co-op movement can grow larger and stronger, and apply for funding, can lobby government for better policies, the sort of normal things that associations accomplish. So yeah, that's I think that's all I have to add. So yeah, webinar that starts and finishes on time. That's amazing.
That would
Well
actually
done.
be a first in my life. I have to
Yeah.
say that honestly.
Me too.
All right. Well, nice to see you all, and take care, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.